Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Revolution. Will not be televised, it will be streamed. This is a conversation about life and leadership in the digital world. I guess we could really say in the world of pandemic, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm yours truly, Dr. Ricky Allmon, along with my fellow host, friend, compadre, partner in crime, a partner in thought, I should add, the Reverend Stephen Thurston II. How you doing, man? What's going on?
All is well, Rick. Always good to see you and connect with our audience Saturday after Saturday, man.
Yes, sir. It's another week. Somebody texted me this morning say, "Do y'all take a Saturday off?" I was like, "No, no days off."
That's not how this works.
We rocking. Stephen, tell them who this is for, man.
Man, everybody who's interested in maximizing their potential, mobilizing their purpose, and multiplying their productivity, whether you be a pastor, a CEO, an entrepreneur, social influencer, a social media giant, lottie dottie, and everybody. If
Right.
you want to grow, develop, and be better, this is the place and this is the platform for you to get what's needful and necessary to live your best life, literally, and level up in the things that you're seeking to do.
Man, we've got an amazing guest today.
Oh,
He's a
yes.
bishop, he's a thought leader, he's a counselor. He wears a multiplicity of hats. But I would have to say this just from what I've observed at a distance, he is effective. And I think that's the most critical way to describe him. Will you please introduce our esteemed guest today? We're so glad that he's here with us.
Yeah, man, I had the honor of making his acquaintance about a year and a half ago at a program called Prime. It's a secret society. I can't say no more about it. Just know that Prime is the thing. Uh, and so we were there, and I was invited to speak. And I thought I did my thing. I was talking about narcissism in the pulpit and all of that. And then the next day, this gentleman got up, and I felt like this, like I thought I was doing the doggone thing, and he got up and just rocked our world. And since then, I've been a fan. I've been in awe. I gleaned from him. He's the pastor of the Tabernacle of the Lord Church in the Baltimore area. An amazing musician. I mean, like amazing. A composer. Some of the stuff y'all singing in church, he wrote that. You just don't know it's him. He's got a focus on family therapy. He's an adjunct professor. He's an author. Just an amazing, brilliant mind. I want to present to some and introduce to others Dr. Bishop C. Guy Robinson.
Oh man, thank you, my friend. Thank you, Dr. Allman. Thank you, and uh, man, my friend is really kind. He slammed us at prom.
I'm sure.
I can say that for him. You know, he, not once, but he did it multiple times. So I'm grateful. Let me just say parenthetically, since you let me out here, man, I'm still quoting you as recently as Sunday. Uh,
Wow.
Sympathy is not a substitute for action. Yeah, I got it written down. See, anytime you're up and preaching, I'm watching. If I,
Thank
You
you,
got
man.
proof. You got proof.
I am I telling the truth, sir? Yes, sir. I'm telling you, I got a witness. Thank you for having me today, and welcome everybody.
Yes, sir. Well, Dr. Robinson, you are amazing. I love your take on the text because you come from that family therapy lens, that psychological lens. You are the only other pastor that I hear talking about the DSM-5 and infusing it into the into the biblical text and helping all of us understand uh, our issues. I'll just put it that way because all of us have issues. And from a clinical sense, you blend that clinical and the spiritual. And we, Ricky and I, over the course of this time of sharing here on this platform, we've been trying to help leaders to grow, especially in this place of pandemic. And I said last Sunday, actually, as I opened up our worship experience, that we've heard that old saying that there are dangers seen and unseen. And some of the unseen dangers that I've encountered in this place called pandemic have been those along the lines of emotional illness, uh, and mental illness, and how those are surfacing. And many people don't know how to name them because, especially the Black community, we're afraid of mental health. The church has shunned it. We've demonized it. We just want to talk about it in spiritual language and not in clinical language. So I want to yield the floor to you to walk us through this issue. We're kind of tagging our time of sharing when the head hurts, because when stuff starts at the head, it flows down to the balance of the body. And that head can be our literal head, or it could be leadership, that's suffering. And then that pain permeates through the body of followers. So the floor is yours. Just unleash on us like you do at Prime.
It's what a powerful subject, and what a relevant subject that you have proposed today. Even as we speak, of course, this is a very unusual, to say the least, season. Last pandemic was 1917, 1918. So for multiple generations, this is an unprecedented season. And so even as we are speaking, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Hotline, SAMHSA hotline, federal agency, is reporting 9 times the usual amount of calls for persons requesting crisis counseling.
Wow.
Who are feeling 9 times the normal. And that hasn't even peaked, according to the World Health Organization. We can anticipate at least an 11% increase in persons, and that's persons who are actually calling to say, this hurts enough that if you will, to stay with our subject, my head hurts enough to make me call. That's not to include the people whose head hurts, but they're mislabeling it, or don't even know it, or have too much pride or shame to acknowledge it, who have too much prominence and are worried about what their public image would be. So if you add all of those persons who should be calling but are not calling, then it's probably much more pronounced than we even realize. And so there are multiple factors in this season. There is of course, the obvious one is the corona pandemic. But even as we've seen in some of the news reports, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who first held the conference to say this is exposing what he called some pre-existing societal ills, which was no surprise to these people who look like me. But what a powerful thing to say, that this pandemic season, there's some stuff it's not causing as much as it is exposing. And that's a powerful thing to consider in and of itself. So then we have racism and systemic issues, and all of that is consistent with mental health, because in the truth is, it's impossible to talk about the mental health disparities and predispositions in the African American community without addressing the realities of racial trauma. It's impossible to talk about the realities of racial trauma without talking about the systemic inequities and dehumanization policies that have really been the ideology of trauma. And so all those things are, and I'll stop with this part, but please chime in. But all those things contribute. If you want to call this a chaotic season, then chaos theory reminds us that it's never really one thing that causes a chaotic or catastrophic moment, but it is the convergence of factors. So there's pre-existing societal unrest, pre-existing racism, pre-existing systemic issues, and the denial and avoidance of the dominant group, if you will, to really recognize the privilege and prejudices that are systemic. And so all of those things, which only exacerbate it, because now you have to get help and convince the other party, that they need help.
That they need help too.
So it was Angela Davis, in fact, who says that racism and oppression is really a mental health condition and a dehumanization of both parties, because we were never meant or intended to live oppressed or being oppressive. And so neither is being true to their authentic humanity. So it's a mutual dehumanization that is happening. And so you have to deal with both of those fronts. Then there's this pandemic. Then there's the challenges of homeschooling. Then there's the reality of elevated reports of domestic abuse
Yes.
that are being reported as persons are, if you will, forced to live together. And it's not causing it, it's exposing familial issues that were already there because there's nowhere else left to go. You know, it's sort of like that scripture in Genesis 32:24 that says, so Jacob was left alone and there he wrestled. Right. The truth is, Jacob already had those issues before he was there. He already had the issues with Laban. He already had the issues with his brother. He already had the constant trickery and all those kind of things. But his busyness allowed him to escape it. Right. But now that he's left alone, there he wrestled with the angel of the Lord. And so perhaps if there's anything good to come out of this very unusual season, it's at least to get us to acknowledge that our head hurts and we need some help.
So basically, in a sociological and psychological context, many people were already immunocompromised.
Absolutely.
They already had pre-existing conditions.
Correct.
That all it took is one pandemic to send them over the edge.
Yes.
So wow.
Yes. Counselors make a distinction between the presenting issue and the actual issue.
Right.
What we might call in homiletical exercises a distinction between the fruit and the root.
Exactly.
And so, usually it takes a presenting issue to stay in context with the wonderful theme of this time of sharing. My head hurts. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the fruit. That's the presenting issue. Mm-hmm. Why does it hurt? May require a neurologist. Why does it hurt? May require a psychologist.
Right.
Why it hurts? Maybe, but it at least begins the presenting issue that allows us to then, if you will, allow persons, what you're doing is saying, this is what's bothering me enough to make me come see you. Right. This might not be the actual condition, but we have to take the symptomology and turn it into a diagnosis. Once we diagnose it, we know how to combat it, or we can develop a treatment plan. And so if there's any good to come out of this, it is that pain can be a signal that something is not right, that there is a disconnect between the actual experience and the expectation. And whenever there's a disconnect between experience and expectation, pain becomes the barometer on a continuum. The more it hurts, the greater the disconnect. That's even in our bodies. If the heart, if the lungs, anything that's not doing what it was, if you will, designed or expected to do, then the barometer is pain. And so the pain of this season, if there's any good that can come out of it, is that it's an opportunity to treat real issues.
So to that point, Bishop, I was thinking about this morning in preparation for talking to you. We know that pain can be either liberating or debilitating. Blaise Pascal, the physicist, said it best. He said pain was the loving and legitimate violence necessary to produce my liberty. What I'd like for you to speak to, that I think a lot of our listeners would like to hear an expanded thought about, and that is, what are those distinguishing factors that determine whether or not the pain or pressure that one is experiencing will become liberating, as it has been for some people who've had to pivot because they were left alone and realized that even though they were putting maximum effort into ministry and a lot of other things, there was a reason they were not getting the results that they wanted. So what are the distinguishing factors between pain being liberating and pain being debilitating?
Wow. What a profound question. I'm going to try and let me know where it comes short. The challenge is, first of all, acknowledging the degree of hurt. That's not that sounds simple, but it's not always easy in our community, particularly in the African American experience. There's been a number of things done on the collective psyche that because of the, quite frankly, horrific ideologies of biological inferiority and those kind of things, has produced a kind of defense mechanism that has essentially a higher pain tolerance in the African American community, which quite frankly means it has to hurt more than perhaps is even necessary to even get us to even say something is not right. Okay. We have all kinds of defensive mechanisms. Just go through it. Child, I'm going through. Right. Man up. Whatever it is, straighten your back. Whatever it is. Right. We have all these kind of things that lend itself towards what is really saying you can take care of this yourself. And so, which brings us to the next area of challenge after acknowledging it is talking to somebody about it. Now that's triggering any kind of trust issues, because help means we need a relationship. That means we have to go to somebody.
Wait, hold on, Bishop. Don't rush past that point. I need you to say that one more time and say it in slow jam style.
Yes, sir. In those cases, help means we need what is called a helping relationship.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It is pastoral counselor Howard Kleinbell who says every relationship does one of three things ultimately. It either forms, transforms, or deforms who we are.
Hold on a minute. We had to give you one of those on that. Say that one more time. It either forms, transforms, or deforms. Wow.
And it's an encyclical kind of thing, and it's even categorical. What a way to categorize our relationships if we have to do relationship inventory.
Yes. So park there for a minute and elucidate those three things. We're not going to let you go past that quickly. So, okay. So speak just briefly to form, transform, deforms, and how relationships affect that.
Absolutely. In terms of our being as social individuals, because that's what we are, mm-hmm. which is already a paradoxical identification, society and individual.
Right.
And we're constantly navigating between this need to individuate and yet recognize that identity cannot be shaped outside of social construct.
Yes.
Right. And so, or as the African proverb says, I am because we are. And so there's this need to individuate, but at the same time, it's not good for man to be alone, because we are designed to be relational. And so we serve a God who reveals himself in relational context. The wonder of the Father, Son, and Spirit, though God is one, we see this model of healthy relationship. And so by a relational God, the very reason that God reveals himself, which is God's act of self-disclosure, is what revelation is. The revelation is the act of a God who wants to be relational. And so we know God because he wants to be known. And so we cannot escape this need to be relational. In fact, one of the signs of mental health concern is being antisocial, avoidant, and that kind of thing. So we're designed to be relational, and at the same time, we need to individuate. So that's the ontological conflict, if you will, right there. And so how do we navigate those? And let me just add this. And we tend to lean more towards one than the other. Even in our world, most of us, we come to be African-American is pretty much to be raised with in that tension that W.E.B. Du Bois called double consciousness. Mm-hmm. Part of that is that we live and we've been socialized with Eurocentric values that are focused on individualism. Mm-hmm. And yet we come from a historical narrative that emphasizes collectivism. Mm-hmm. And the village is important and how we navigate those two. So with that as the prolegomena, if you will, here's this piece with relationships. Relationships form us, which means that we are products of nature and nurture.
Right.
So there are certain biological predispositions, and that's a big debate in human behavior. Both of you have psychological backgrounds, so that's a big debate, nature and nurture. So which one is us? And not to preach on it, but you even see it with Jacob. Is Jacob a product of nature, or is he a product of nurture? On one hand, he was born trying to trip up his brother.
Right.
That's nature. That's biological predisposition. In fact, the word was you have a war within you. So in a sense, Jacob could argue, I was born this way,
right,
if you will. But then it is his mother and who teaches him how to be a trickster, which is what his name means.
Right.
It's Laban who he goes through the psychological warfare with. That's nurture. So is he a product of nature or nurture? Well, that text would suggest both. So he's formed by these relationships. Even as Adam, if you want to go back a little further, even as Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. So there's our authentic formation, which means how did God purpose us and intend us to be? Then what we see in Genesis 3 is the second kind of relationship, which is serpentine, which is a deforming relationship. Deforming relationships reconfigure our original divine design, if you want to put it in theological terms.
That's great.
Yes, sir.
It causes us to look at life differently. What God gave in forming Adam and Eve was a life with legitimate boundaries, opportunities and boundaries. You can eat from every tree. This is you. Here's your assignment. Here's your purpose. This is what I formed you to do. This is your life's work. Just as all of us have a particular passion or orientation towards one particular thing, or two, Adam's was work this field. That's how you were formed. And this is your boundary. You can enjoy all of your life except this. This is your limit. Serpentine relation, that's how it's formed. Serpentine relationship comes along and changes the perspective. I wonder in my own theological imagination, how many times did Eve and Adam walk by that tree and say, no, that's the boundary.
Wow.
That's not me.
Right.
Until the serpent introduced a different kind of wisdom. And the Bible says, and then all of a sudden they looked at it and saw that it was good for eating. And so there's the deforming. Yeah. And that's the relationship. And then of course, this is where, if we were preaching, you'd say, put me in E flat. then there's the transforming relationship.
Right.
Which returns us to our original intention and allows us to be and reclaim our authentic self. And so I would suggest that even in these moments, with the revolution will not be televised, it will be streamed. What we're doing, or hopefully prayerfully doing, is helping people who have been deformed by the dysfunctional relationships of life to know that there is transformative relationship available to return, that it's not too late to be your authentic self. And they're the three categories of relationship.
You implied something, and I'm trying to alley-oop this to Stephen, but this is our first time meeting Bishop, so I'm just kind of pulling the big brother card on him right now. You implied something with this deforming relationship. And these are conversations Stephen and I are having ongoing.
Yes, sir.
You just said something, Bishop. You said the serpent comes with a different kind of wisdom. And that was so smooth, because the implication there is that all wisdom is not created equal. That it's possible for somebody to come into your life, to intersect your life, who appeals to a certain aspect of your life, sure, but they're there to diminish the value of your life. Would I be safe in saying that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what makes it, again, and we don't have to necessarily, I know you're theologians, we don't have to argue the literal or the transcendent truths. I'm leaning more towards the transcendent and metaphorical
Exactly. I'm
richness
with you.
of this
Yes.
Edenic text.
Yes.
So here's what it is. Remember what the serpent said. First of all, the description of the serpent is that he is more subtle.
Exactly.
And so it's a different kind of wisdom. And the prohibition that he entices them to see differently is the tree of knowledge.
Right.
And wisdom is the ability to use knowledge.
It's that appeal,
and
right?
what he's invited to eat from is the tree of knowledge, and you can miss the critical conjunction of good and
yes.
evil. So, and that's what becomes, because you can, to go to your point, you can see the good in the fruit. It said, as Eve saw that it was good, but she didn't see the evil in it.
Right.
And that's often how the most effective deformative relationships come, is that we can see something good in it, but we're missing the evil ingredient that's added that deforms us from our authentic identity.
Sir, that is excellent. Thank you. For sharing that. So we were talking about how to recycle pain and pressure. It's either going to be liberating or debilitating. Of course, I had you to take, I'm almost going to call it a divine
detour.
Right, a detour at that moment. We're using a lot of preaching colloquial, you all who are watching. It's 3 preachers on here, so forgive us. Somebody said they just quickened is what's come in. So number 1, you talked about acknowledgement. Number 2, you talked about seeking help, which is where our divine detour came in. That was so necessary. Thank you for that. Take us at least one more step before I give this over to Stephen. Take us one more step in these distinguishing factors, whether pain will be debilitating or liberating.
There's acknowledgement, and then there's, engagement, if we want to make it alliterative.
Right.
That's where we actually have to be in a healthy, transforming relationship.
Okay.
That means we have to disclose, this is what's going on. My head hurts. Whatever it is, my finances are messed up. My family is breaking up. Whatever that issue is. So we have to be able to have some place where we can say, this is what is going on. And then from there has to be the willingness to follow through with the strategy.
Yes.
Because so many times we live in a world that wants instant gratification. Right. And the truth is, not all healings. Again, I'm a man of faith. I have, I believe in it. I believe there are times when miracles were done overnight, or with the touching of a hand, with the laying on of a hand. I still believe in miracles. I'm with you.
You don't even have the disclaimer on here, Bishop.
All right. Good. I just want to be clear.
Look, no disclaimers needed. There's some folk who want some real help. They believe in God. They believe in healing. But you're on here because I think it's so important for people to understand process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because here's what we miss. God is committed to our person. We've got to be committed to our process.
Absolutely.
And that's why a lot of people don't get the healing they need, because they say, well, God's committed to my person. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to get in the prayer line. I'm going to go find me a prophet. Wonderful. Do all that. But after you get through with all that, you've got to engage your process. And that's when you're going to need a therapist. You're going to need a Bishop Guy Robinson to come into your life and help you walk out what you're trying to work out. So continue.
And it's real it's real. So thank you for liberating me there.
Yes, sir. I had
to. Having given my disclaimer to Pentecostal proclivities, let me say this, that I do also believe that there's many times that Jesus, even if we go scriptural, who is a wonderful counselor, as Isaiah described him, was intentional in subscribing process to people.
Right.
Go show yourselves to the priest.
Yes.
They were healed as they went. Or, do you see anything? I touched you once. I see men as trees.
Right.
Which means I'm a little better than I was before, but I need some more help.
Right.
Yes, sir.
That's the power of it. And so many times, even in our experiences, we want that instant change. But to be truthful, let me switch over to a counseling setting. The chances are, even Freud recommended at least 20 sessions of psychotherapy, because the truth is, transformation is.
Say that one more time, Bishop. Freud recommended what? Again, say it again.
20 sessions of psychotherapy.
Yes, sir.
The idea is, what took a lifetime to develop cannot be undone in 45 minutes.
Yes, sir.
That's the basic principle. There's nature and nurture that turned us into who we are.
Yes.
Or created those conditions. We didn't just become addicted to the substance overnight. We didn't just, our marriage or family relations didn't just fall apart overnight, but there are systems and structures in our family, and pre-existing conditions and attachment issues and unrealistic expectations we developed in life. And so there are a series of relationships that were formed and deformed that contributed and created what caused our head to hurt. And what you even see on the largest sociological level is the effort of some persons to just kind of dismiss this. We still talking about social justice. We still talking about that because they think that the legislation in 1960 something made everything all right, without understanding that there is a long history to this and that there's still tremendous inequities that are happening. And so the avoidant tactics are because you want to believe that it can all be fixed overnight. But the truth is, it's still the Lord's doing, but the Lord works in process.
Yes.
From the beginning of creation.
Right.
Yes, sir.
That there is a process to the things of God in transformative work.
Bishop, you talked about, and I'm gonna step back to some of the commentary that you made about African Americans. You just made comment about it's a long history. So I want to dive into epigenetic transmission. I know that's a big word for some of the people that are watching, but the simple version of that is that trauma can pass down through DNA.
Right.
And as a result of that, because our audience is largely African American that's viewing in, can we unpack that for a minute to help individuals to understand how stuff that they may not have even experienced personally, but because our ancestors experienced it and it's passed down through DNA, it's still impacting us today?
Yes, absolutely. We're getting into a little bit of even the concept of evolutionary psychology. Argues that some things like, for example, maybe to tie this in to the where we were before, the fear of serpents is believed to be epigenetic. For example, meaning that it was a big life threat to earlier agricultural and moving around societies. And so the defense, it became an existential threat to human existence. And so we often disconnect what needs to be connected as the mind-body connection. And because we tend to study them separately, we tend to think of them as functioning very compartmentally, when in truth, they really act interdependently. And so over time, there are certain, the whole idea is that there are certain genetic transformations that happen to give us what are really survival skills in the next generation. And depending on the environment, I stay with this, the serpent analogy is because our environment, in our present environment, serpents are not as much of a risk as they were before, but the transference is still there.
Yes.
Even though the environment has changed, the biological evolution is still happening. And so certainly that can happen in anyone who's been traumatized, which is a profound challenge, even in multiple ways, to the ways we've been historically defining trauma. Trauma was usually, and by the book, thought of as a direct experience with something that was considered an existential threat or to one's well-being. Usually you had to be the one that was immediately being whipped or, God forbid, raped or robbed or any of those things. But that wisdom is being challenged now by the kinds of things that you're bringing up, and even by technology.
Yes.
So trauma can be shared now because none of us on this call actually had a knee on our neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Right.
Yes.
But by way of actually now being in the place live, we actually all feel some of the psychological things that are happening and the trauma
Yes.
of that 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Right.
Yes, sir.
It's shared, so trauma can be shared, I guess, if we had to put it in a simple sentence.
Yeah. So I'm about to get in trouble here, but that's kind of what I'm known for. We often look at the occupant of the White House, and even those who don't have a sociological or psychological background can clearly see narcissistic personality disorder. What often is humorous to me, because I understand sociology and psychology, especially within the context of leaders, is that I'll see leaders in pulpits bashing him, but they share those same demons. How can we inform our members, our congregants who are under the same type of oppressive leadership to handle, to deal with, to navigate a narcissistic pastor?
He did, Bishop, he did disclaimer his
he did
inquiry. He did disclaimer it.
Well, let me start here, and this is some of the stuff that we started vibing on when we met. So I love it. So
Yes.
Let me start with this. Let me say this. I believe that since we've taken it to the ecclesiological world, let me say this. I believe, and part of my passion is can be summarized in three things: is to get us as the church to reclaim our biblically mandated responsibility to be the primary soul care providers. Soul does come from, does mean the word psyche or suke, which translates to psyche in the Vulgate, from which the word psychology does come. And so, and logos. So psychology is the logic or word about the soul. And if anybody is charged to be aware, to speak on soul matters, which is the mind, will, and emotions of our identity, it certainly biblically is the church. So I think we have to reclaim the responsibilities and roles of being the primary soul care providers, much like general practitioners. And so, which certainly may mean that I may need to refer you if it's a cardiology matter or something. Yes. But the primary caregiver of the soul, I believe the church has to reclaim not just the bragging rights, but right. The responsibilities.
Right.
And the responsibilities of responsible ecclesiastical soul care involves much more than hooping and hollering and shouting people. But it involves scholasticism and it involves self-care.
Say that one more time, Bishop, on Slow Jam again. This is Slow Jam Saturday, because you're putting it out there. Say it one more time. This is so important for people to understand, because we really want people to be healed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And based on the sociological and psychological ignorance sometimes that emanates from the place that should be a sanctuary for the soul, they're experiencing aggravation. Absolutely. So say that one more time. Repeat what you said one more time, in the place of shouting, jumping, speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If we're going to reclaim our biblically given responsibility, then we have to see our role as being more than singing and shouting folk. But it has to be, I'm not throwing that out.
Sure.
But I'm saying we got that. We need to add the missing.
Hold on, Bishop, let me do it for you. Bishop Guy Robinson is not diminishing the value of praise, worship, speaking in tongues, laying on of hands, or the prophetic gifts. Okay, it's done for you, Bishop. You don't have to disclaim anymore. I covered it for you.
Ayabosha. Thank you so much, sir. Here we go. So reclaim, if we're going to reclaim that, got to move beyond, or in addition to singing and shouting, we have to commit to scholasticism, doing the work, studying to show ourselves approved. There was a time when the scholars did come from the church.
Right.
Which is why even in the academy, they still wear robes because scholasticism and clergy were once synonymous. Somewhere we got off track. So we have to recommit to scholasticism, and then we have to recommit to self-awareness, which means that we have to be aware of the human proclivity to see dysfunction and issues in other people easier than we do in ourselves, which is the very meaning of Jesus explaining our proclivity to see splinters in other people and missing the beam in our own eyes. That transfers to what was just raised about narcissistic personalities and those kind of things, is that we have to see our own proclivities.
Right.
There is, and again, and Steve, Reverend Thurston and I have talked about this, there is no, that we're not talking about, we talked about some of this stuff. You have to be able to say, I'm anointed, I'm called of God, I'm a leader, but I have some narcissistic traits and proclivities.
Yeah. Yes.
And own that as something that I'm wrestling with. Even Paul had to say, I got a thorn in my flesh. I got something I'm working on that, lest having preached to others, I myself will become a castaway. And so if you study, and you already know this, brothers to who I'm talking to, but those who are watching today, if you study the mental health disciplines, pretty much the first year is going to be studying you.
Right.
You got to take.
Yes, sir.
You got to take.
I said to Bishop Robinson before we came on live, I said, thank you for being sane, because there's nothing worse than somebody trying to help others to mitigate and navigate their insanity, and they're not sane themselves. And I don't think that point can be stressed enough. It's so important that if you're going to administer healing, that you keep yourself. And can you speak to this before Stephen takes us out? I think it's important, Bishop Robinson, to speak to the fact that it's important for those of us who serve as channels for healing, who administer healing, to stay in a constant state of being healed.
Yes, sir.
Speak to that as we go out from this. And I know we've asked you to be exhaustive in a concise space, but sir, you have the mental dexterity to do it, and you've done an amazing job. Thank you so much for all that you've shared. So speak to that as we go off today.
I think that's so very important, and maybe that's the a big deal to push, is that self-care, is that serving others begins with that self-awareness and self-care, and owning that that's something we're working on. Again, I'm using biblical parallels because while the Bible is not a book of psychology systematically, it is full of psychologically rich material.
Yes, sir.
And so you see Paul consistently saying, I'm the chief of sinners, which is saying I know I'm doing powerful work, but I got issues.
Right.
And one of them I asked the Lord to take away, and here's the kicker. He said, I'm not. Your
Right.
grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. And so I'm beating this, I'm battling this daily. And so which goes to your point of in many ways, healing is much like we say of salvation, sanctification, and glorification. I'm saved, I'm being saved, and I shall be saved. I'm saved from the penalty, I'm being saved from the power, and one day I shall be saved from the very presence of sin. And we could apply the same thing because particularly in Eastern Orthodox Christianity, sin is not perceived as a deed, but as a health condition. And so in that sense, thus we talk about the sin-sick soul. And so, or you have writers from the Methodist tradition who were influenced by Eastern Orthodox Christianity, like the Wesley brothers, who in Rock of Ages, who says, be of sin the double cure.
Who was
safe
that?
from wrath.
Who was that? Soren Kierkegaard even talked about sickness unto death.
Sickness unto death.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and so that's that. So there is a parallel that sees the harmatological condition or the condition of our sins as a sickness. It takes a medical model. And with that, if we can say, I'm saved, I'm being saved, I shall be saved, I'm justified, I'm being sanctified, and I shall be glorified. So we can say about healing that I'm healed, I'm being healed, and I shall be healed. The final healing is eschatological, but right now it is progressive. And all of us, the Lord is working on all of us, and it's important for us to own that. Even as it refers to our mental health, which is how we got on this from being able to recognize. So we should be able to say, wow, and even see a portion of ourselves. I started off by saying this in any discipline. I have some friends who are chefs, and they shared with me going to culinary school. How's it going? Well, first year, we just talking about cleanliness. How to keep your utensils clean, how to keep your stuff clean, how to keep the kitchen clean. Before we serve others, we got to make sure we've been exhaustive in the efforts to be as clean as possible. And so it is with us who will preach the gospel.
Stephen, I hope we've alleviated somebody's headache today, man.
I hope so. This is the doctor that has the panacea for our pain and the prescription for our problem.
Listen, where else can you get theology,
yes,
psychology, and sociology in 50 minutes? Except the revolution will not be televised. It will be streamed. This is amazing. Stephen, take us out of here, man. Bishop, thank you. Listen, I know Stephen's going to mention it, but I'm going to start out. His Cash App is there on the screen. $cartergrob. Just send Bishop a thank you. This, of course, is in our Facebook group. It's on my YouTube channel, and it'll be shared. But make sure you just thank him, follow him, connect to him. Stephen's going to get some more information out of him, so you'll be able to draw out of this reservoir that's bringing healing and wholeness, not only to the body of Christ, but to humanity. Because after all, that's what Christ is about. Christ has never been about religion. He's always been about humanity. And so you'll be able to receive that. Stephen, this is great, man. Thank you for the recommendation, Stephen.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to bring us the best.
Yes, sir.
Guy Robinson is one of God's greatest gifts. Thank you, sir. Listen, I know y'all gonna church hop tomorrow, so you need to stop on through Tabernacle of the Lord Church tomorrow and hear what God is gonna say through Dr. Guy Robinson tomorrow. And then you can come on to Salem and wherever else you're going tomorrow. But please connect with him, connect with his ministry. Drop some love in that Cash App. Pastor Robinson, Bishop, you got your book out. He's an author, got an amazing piece that will bless the body. Tell us about the book, where we can get it.
Yes, it's Critical Collaboration. The lighting is kind of messing it up, but there it is right there. But Critical Collaboration, thank you, is pastors and mental health professionals as partners in care And so it's on Amazon. It's in Kindle for those who are techie. You can download it digitally, or you can order it in any of those bookstore venues.
You have a website, Bishop Robinson?
I do. You can go to criticalcollaboration.com, or hook up with me on Bishop G Robinson on Instagram, or Facebook is as Guy Robinson. I'd love to stay connected. Thank you so much.
And we're going to make sure your website, for those that are in the Facebook group, you'll see it there in the caption. So criticalcollaborations.com. Go and download his book, purchase his book on Amazon. Make sure you connect. Stephen, what you got going on, man?
Listen, man, just the Mirror Moment movement. We're rolling. The content for this month just dropped. We're talking about how to heal yourself from a relationship perspective.
So
and then from the leadership, we're dealing with procrastination and how to kill that demon. So I need you to go to StephenThurston.com, connect with the Mirror Moment movement, get access to that content that's dropping on a monthly basis. Get those power packs to empower your life. And then I need you on Thursday nights to be on Facebook to catch Ricky Allmon. He's doing this thing. Go to RickyAllmon.org. You got to get his ebook, his audio book, and everything else that he has on there to help you to structure and strategize for maximum potential in your life. So please connect with these fine, brilliant gentlemen, these amazing minds. And listen, since y'all are in the group, y'all are going to be the first ones to hear about something amazing that we got coming out. Bishop, we're letting you know now, you're included in it. We'll give you the details later.
Yes.
You got to be included in what we work. We're cooking up something behind the scenes.
Yeah, we were plotting while you were talking, Bishop. Stephen and I were texting and plotting on you.
Very cool.
We got some plans for you.
Yes, sir. But that's it. Enjoy the balance of your day. Thanks for connecting with us, and do us a favor. Get somebody else that you know that loves great content, that loves to have their cerebellum stimulated. Other stuff is being stimulated with WAP, but we want to get your brain stimulated. So please plug into the work that we're doing here on The Revolution. Will not be televised. It will be streamed. Have an amazing week. We'll holler at you next Saturday.